Bill 2020 and the Transport Authority validation. So, Mr. President, with that in mind, I beg to move that the Public Transport Miscellaneous Provisions Bill 2020 be read a second time.
Question is, I recognize Senator Franklin.
Good morning, sir, and thank you very much for allowing me these few minutes. And I said few, I mean very few. You know, I was afraid that the government would have come here and do exactly what they just did. Try to invalidate something that cannot be validated. Try to validate something that cannot be validated. Sir, I'm speaking to the validation of bus fares. Bus fares were increased pursuant to an order made by the minister in the budget. Sir, a minister cannot raise bus fares in a budget. A budget is for taxes, where you can collect your tax in an emergency. You want money, you want it now, so you can come to Parliament, raise, you can increase a tax, or you can introduce a new tax. Bus fares are not taxes, so you cannot raise bus fares in a budget. But even if you could, the government would have had 4 months in which to bring legislation to Parliament to validate, not to validate what the minister spoke in the budget. So let me go to the Provisional Collection of Taxes Act. That is the act that enables the minister to come to Parliament and speak a tax into law. If you look at the interpretation section of the Provisional Collection of Taxes Act, it says, tax includes all assessment, charges, duties, fees, rates, impositions, and other levies, however called, the proceeds of which are payable into the consolidated fund as part of the revenues of Barbados. I do not know if, at the end of the day, people who collect bus fares take them and pay them in the consolidated fund. That is the only way that this could be a tax, and this is the only way that it can be raised in the budget. What must be done, and I've seen it happen before, where the minister announces that there would have been a bus fare increase. Immediately after the budget, the order was laid in Parliament. So it wasn't actually raised in the budget. It was raised by the order that came immediately after the budget. He just announced it in the budget, let people know this is what we're going to do. But we have a situation here where where the minister, without necessarily checking the law, imposes an increase in bus fares. So that means that from April the 15th last year, the people in this country have been paying increased bus fares without any lawful authority. They've been collecting it. There has been no law in place that would have given the bus companies permission to collect bus fare. I ain't seen nobody marching up Broad Street talking about this, you know, or marching up there talking about this. These are things that affect the black in this country, you know. These are the poor people who pay bus fares. And I didn't see nobody get up and march and complain about it. But we copy other people's, pick up people's fare wage. When we got things to deal with in this country. We have a government out of control that is doing whatever it likes without any restraint. And, well, of course, we know what that is. You are abusing your majority, and you're doing whatever you like, and then figure that you can pass a validation bill. You cannot validate this. It cannot be validated because, let me explain to you why. You cannot raise bus fare. So you're actually causing people, transport board and others, to take away people's money. Money is property without due process of law. Now you must compensate persons, though, because you're taking away people's property, without authority, you got to compensate them. The only thing you're going to do is pay back the bus fare. But how are you going to do that? It is virtually impossible. It is impossible because when you get in a bus and you pay, then you don't keep the receipts. There is no authority up to today to charge $3.50. And we have a very passive society that goes along and let this government behave as it likes. I am not questioning the will of the people of this country. They elected a government and they give them all the seats. But at the same time, you must recognize that you have an awesome responsibility to govern with wisdom. First, you must realize that when you are given this type of responsibility, you cannot abuse it. There is some saying about from whom much is given, much is expected. We do not expect the government to behave like this. You must apologize to the country for this, you know. You must apologize to everybody who has paid that additional $150 since April last year, and tell them, look, we're sorry we make a mistake. You don't come in here and just wave it over and say that you validate it. You cannot validate this. This is an illegality. You must validate a tax. This is not a tax. The Provisional Collection of Taxes Act speaks only to taxes. The problem here, sir, is when people get into office, they must learn their craft. Yes. They must learn their craft. Then and the biggest problem here too is, but the more major part is that you have civil servants who are supposed to advise the minister, but if they don't know, what happens? Because this should not have passed the civil service. This should never. And I know we had people like Algie Simmons, Carlisle Burton, Branson Cullimore, those stalwarts, Major Daniel, they're all passed. You know, who this would never have passed, Harcourt Lewis. But you know what's happening? People get jobs and come in at the top. And I will always blame the 1974 constitutional amendments because that gave the Prime Minister power to intervene in the appointment of senior civil servants. And as a result, we end up with a lot of political people who didn't learn their craft. They just got the job because they know somebody. And worse yet, and I know I can get Casper for this because I've said it before and I got Casper ready for it, and I can say it again. When the new government comes in, you remember a lot of those people were appointed by the last fellas. So even if you let them mistake, they let them make it. Because they think that their loyalty is to some political party. No, their loyalty is to Barbados. And they must give the best possible advice. Some heads should roll for this. The minister should find out who is responsible and deal with them. If this was a junior civil servant, I would be there at the Ministry of Public Service defending him all. Like now, there would be some case against him. But we have this level of incompetence at the top of the public service, too much of it. And they are mostly political actors, either from the last regime or from the new one coming on. Barbados will not get any better with this level of service from senior public officers. They get cussed me, I don't mind. I get cussed a lot. I get cussed in here. But I'll tell you, I ain't looking for no votes, so I can say these things. We need people who will be able to stand up. Look, in the Public Service Act, if a minister proposes to do something, the senior civil servant, the permanent secretary, is obliged by the act to tell the minister, no, you can't do that. And if the minister continues, he puts it in writing. That's what the act requires. Tell me of any one permanent secretary since this government came in that wrote something to the minister and said, minister, you can't do that. I know in the last administration, a very good permanent secretary, a good friend of mine, he had his leanings to the last administration too. But he told the minister, no, you can't do that. And she said, I want him gone. And the prime minister had to transfer him out of there because he was doing his job. Yeah? He was doing his job. Mind you, he was one of the few people who didn't mix matters, you know. Right now we have too many people who, when the minister said jump, they say how high. And then when they say, can I come back to no minister? No. You must do your job to the best of your ability. Mind you, if this is the best of your ability, you need to be a clerical officer. No minister should have been allowed to let this pass. And for so long. What is the Cabinet Office doing? What are the people in the Ministry of Finance doing, the senior people in the Ministry of Finance? Some one of them should pay for this, you know. They're going to go get a bit, but the problem is, they're all politicians, or mostly politicians, so they don't recognize the duty to this country and do the right thing. If you're a permanent secretary, and the minister won't get rid of you, they transfer you someplace else, we're going to do transfer you to another permanent secretary, can't do nothing else. You would have to have broken the rules. But if you advise the minister don't like the advice, you're not breaking the rule. This nonsense has to stop. And I hope that this is the last time I have to speak in these terms about the civil service, because it bothers me that I have to say these things, but I must, because nobody else will. It seems as though the government firing for some of these civil servants and they don't want to deal with them. You got to deal with them. A lot of the senior people give so much bad advice over and over and over, and they get away with it. I will get to speak to some of that bad advice in another piece of legislation that I see on the other places or the paper. So I'm going to save that for then. But so I don't know. I'm going to vote no about this validating something that is impossible to validate, impossible to make legal. The other bill that seeks to regulate the transport sector. Good luck. Every administration that I can remember since they had ZRs and minibuses and things tried to do that. Now, if you achieve that, I kiss one of you. I honestly, you remember Jam Busting? How that started? You remember? these people refuse to obey the law, so the law changed to accommodate them. They do whatever they like on the roads. You're driving and behind them, and they're not full, so they pull in the middle of the road and drive at 10 kilometers per hour. And you dare not blow the horn because you fell to stop. So you can't pass at all. Something needs to be done with the sector. And I hear people say, oh, it is just a few too many. I know people who own minibuses and stuff, and they try to put some discipline in place, but in the end, the way you pay these people don't allow them to behave very well, because you get paid in the dollar. So the more dollars you make, the more money you can make. So they follow on the road like madmen, passing and corners, driving through traffic lights. Let me tell you something. If I come at the traffic light there, so by Oxnard, come across from NCF onto the University Drive. When that light says go, you better not. You wait, because the fellas ain't stopping. Don't go yet. You wait. Don't look at the light. Look at the vehicles. I see it too often. I see it almost every day, because I pass it almost on a daily basis. So we need, and I am grateful that the government will try to regulate them. I don't know if this will work, but you will have my support in trying to do this, because they're dangerous, you know. Speeding bullets. Something needs to be done about them. If this can do it, so be it. But I started ahead of myself. You know, when I got to look at these amendments, and this is a complaint now. I don't normally complain, but I have to do that now. Each one of us here, as legislators, are entitled to receive a copy of the laws of Barbados. I have not received mine in 2 years, but I go on Parliament's website and I look to see when these bills come before me, see if I can use the information on the website, but sometimes they are not updated. Like, if I give an example, this Miscellaneous Provisions Bill deletes Section 106 of the Road Traffic Act. Yes, I realize that. And I saw what that is. I saw it on Parliament's website. But it also deletes 106A. It ain't there. And I don't have a copy of the laws that I can verify what 106 is. So I am going to vote to delete something I know by deleting it. So that's why you might have my support in principle, but I can't vote blindly. You've got to give me the tools to work with. I need the tools. I, for one, take my duties here very seriously, and I read the pieces of legislation that you send before me. I can't read them if I don't have any way of getting them. So that is my concern. But let me get back to some of the concerns in the transport sector. And I want to speak specifically. I don't know, you might say that I'm speaking for my members, but I have to do that. I have some members in the transport sector at the Transport Board. They are the only the only people who work for the government, but some of them, the drivers, that do not get pensions and gratuity. And every administration promise them that they will get a pension, they will work on it. I remember David Thompson having a meeting with them and promising these drivers that they will get pensions and gratuities like every other public officer. So far, they have gotten nothing. Pensions and gratuities have been reserved for the senior managers at the Transport Board. Well, at least some of the senior managers, because we have an instance where the last personal manager she got vexed and retired because as she got in, this new government will now do her work. She disciplined a member of staff because he got up and drive a bus. He didn't have a license to drive the bus. And he hit it. Then when I got the transport over material and I fix it, but don't tell anybody. When he got caught, so she disciplined him. He was dismissed. And she was ordered to take him back. She said, look, I can't do my job if you people coming above my head because he got connections to this party. So look, I go. And she resigned. She said, look, let me run it. To this day, she has not gotten her gratuity that is due to her, even though she has a letter telling her how much the gratuity is since 2018. But other state managers who retired since then, year later, have gotten theirs. It is unfair to this lady. Her sin is that she's a supported Democratic Party all her life. I have appeared before her in disciplinary matters. I have found her to be professional and non-partisan when it came to doing her work. So if after work and she go out to meetings and she help the party of her choice, that is not something that you can hold against her. Give the woman she money. This is unfair. And when you hear that other people who have connections to this party in power retire a couple months ago and get their gratuities, their lump sum gratuities, you know. At first they were proposing to pay her in 9 installments and all kind of stuff, and she was willing to take whatever installments as long as she get her money. Then they pull back on that. But other people can get theirs. So I'm appealing to the government to be fair and treat people fairly, not because they might be members or supporters of your party that you can treat people badly if they're not. Sorry? I didn't tell the president of any names that I proposed to call this morning, but I will tell you after. This lady, I saw her up to yesterday. She hasn't gotten her monies yet. Fix it. There's one last thing I want to talk about, see? As I said, I'm only going to spend a few minutes, and I think a bit more over a few minutes. I work on White Park Road. So one day I took my car to get fixed. Not to get service and anything. And I came down to the bus stand, I came down to the bus stand and said, well, I will get a Bushall van that will take me to work. And because it passes the bus past my office. I go to the bus stand. And I was waiting by the sign marked Bushall, and I ain't seen a Bushall van at all. So I asked one of the attendants, what happened to the Bushall van? She told me, I'm talking about one of the persons who work with the transport authority in the bus stand. She told me, they don't come in here. They bypass the bus stand and go and park up by the park. And all kind of things and behaviors they like on the road. Because then, in order for me to get there, I had to leave the bus stand and walk up by the park. Like I'm fit. Fix those things. These people are a law unto themselves, the behaviors they like. And you think the transport, if one of the staff members who call up the buses and tell you which bus to come to and all kind of stuff, knows that the Bushall van is coming there, the heads know too. Fix it. I don't want to go into the myriad of complaints that you hear about the sector, because these are widespread and notorious. Everybody knows about them. And as I said, I wish the government good luck in regulating this thing, because they are dangerous. I see somebody send me a WhatsApp thing where a fellow pass on the inside, locking the body and getting out the other one, All these things, that something needs to be done. Mr. President, I thank you so much for allowing me to speak. Thank
Thank you, Senator. I next recognize Senator Greenidge.
Mr. President, I did not psych up myself or prepare myself or anything to speak on this particular topic. The whole question of the transport sector. I'm literally filling in a number. And I want to begin by saying that I do agree with Senator Moore that not all of those drivers who work in the sector, driving the ZRs, not all of them are bad, not all of them are reckless. And therefore, I wouldn't throw the blanket over the entire sector. But I do agree that some of what Senator Franklin has said definitely applies. The way in which they conduct themselves and the way in which they drive on the roads. With this particular amendment, Mr. President, anyone who drives or anyone who conducts on a PSV without a valid permit will be given 3 chances, the 3-strike rule. My only concern there is that I would have widened that net and make it include quite a few more of the offenses which these that are drivers, yes, commit. And I do believe, sir, that it will affect them. Some of them have said in public, I've read it in the newspapers, some of them have said that it will not affect them in the least. But I do believe that this particular 3-strike rule will affect them because they would know that they will be denied a livelihood. They could be denied a livelihood because when you revoke their license, it's like taking away their basket and their hoe. Sir, there are so many ZR drivers now who have long sheets of convictions, sometimes over 100 fines have been imposed on a singular fella. That has been happening in this sector. And they pay the fines. They pay the fines. And yet they do the same thing over and over again. And that is where the problem is. They can handle the fines. Let us take away their tools of trade. Let us take that license from them and see what the outcome will be. I believe, sir, that it would be different. We cannot allow the drivers of the ZRs, sir, to keep flouting the law. And therefore, I agree that we should try this system of a strike, a red card. We should use that system and let them know that you are serious. That particular sector has to be brought under control. We have to institute, Mr. President, different measures. You know, they say different strokes for different folks. If the present strokes that we're using, they are not working, get different strokes. Give them, sir, a punishment that they will feel. Take that license from them. Forget the fine. Yes, they will get the 1, 2, but then don't give them a fine again. Something else. Sir, in football, and you commit a foul, you get a yellow card. But you know, the next time you commit a similar foul, you get a red one. And with that red card, I have seen many an offender brought to tears. Because you don't only get sent off, you also miss the next game or the next 2 games. And sometimes that is where the finals are. So you miss playing the finals. So it hurts. It does hurt when you give people the red card. And you recall too, sir, I know you used to follow athletics, that once upon a time, you had 2 chances when it came to beating that gun in races like the 100 meters. Remember Lidford Christie in Atlanta, he beat it once. And then he beat it the second time. Out goes you. Out goes you. He gone. Yes. So you get on your marks, you get set, and you beat. People even said that he did it deliberately because he was frightened for the opposition. Nowadays, the rule has changed though. You only got 1 false start. You don't get the 2 anymore. You only get 1 false start. So, sir, the rule now and the law is that you get $1,000 for your first offense. You get $2,000 for your second offense, and you get revocation of your license for out goes you for the third offense. Remember though that the way in which the law is framed, it does not necessarily mean that it is a permanent revocation. They never said it that way, because there is still hope that you could get your license back again, but at least it is revoked. And sir, Senator Franklin did hint at it when he spoke. A lot of the reason for a lot of what is happening in this sector on our roads is because the owners of these ZRs demand that they receive a certain amount of money per day. They say, well, $500 is mine every day. And only after you have made that $500 for me can you think about making $1 for yourself. And you know, sir, that is why some of these drivers are so very reckless on our roads. So blame, Mr. President, has to attach to the owners as well, because in a way, they are aiding and abetting that, exploiting too, that bad behavior. I do believe, Mr. President, that if ZRs were owner-driven, that things would be better. It would put an end to the hustling. It would put an end to the reckless driving. But I'm no fool, sir. I'm no fool. I know it is not practical for us to legislate that each ZR be overdriven, be owner-driven. Because, sir, some owners have more than one vehicle. And some of them are elderly. You can't be in 2 places at the same time. I know that. Some of them are otherwise employed. And we can't ask them to give up that original job and go and drive this ZR. I know it's not practical. But, sir, it should not be too difficult. It should not be too difficult for us to legislate that every driver of a ZR drives that particular vehicle as the servant or the agent of the owner. And as a consequence, sir, that the owner is liable for many of the infractions of the driver. It calls for the drafting of it. And I do believe that we can draft our legislation in such a way that the owners become liable for a lot of the nonsense which the ZR drivers do on the road. Sir, if we were ever to accomplish that drafting, sir, I do believe that every sensible owner would pay his driver a flat fee. I do believe that, sir. Or, sir, he would have to be avoiding, he'd be prosecuted time and time again for hustling. And I believe he would do the former, pay a flat fee and take some of that nonsense off the road. About 2 months, less than that, ago, I read where someone was interviewing a ZR driver at the river terminal. And the ZR driver was saying that if you are running for a transport board bus and it leaves you, that the transport board driver doesn't have to care about you. But he says the van driver, that is the ZR driver, will stop because he has to hustle for every dollar. That was his explanation. He has to get every dollar. So he would stop at a place other than a bus stop and he would commit an offense and he would be charged and so on. I know when I read that, sir, I smiled because it said two things to me. It said that what that ZR driver was actually saying was that I am willing to break the law in order to make money for myself and my boss. They also suggested to me, Mr. President, that he was saying that if I used to be paid a flat fee, I would not have to do that amount of hustling and that amount of law breaking. I read too, sir, where a spokesman for the ZR group, I think it's a Mr. Raphael, he made the point that the government's initiative, to assist passengers by allowing ZMs and BTs, those coaches and so on, to pick up passengers during this COVID time, Mr. Raphael said that that was unfair to drivers because he said that ZRs are going up the road, they are seeing passengers on the roadside, and by the time they get to the top of the route and they turn to come back, all the passengers gone, that the BMs, the ZMs and the BTs have taken them and gone. Now, I thought that was a bit too narrow, a bit too one-sided, the way they saw it, because one of the reasons why this particular program was initiated was because of the need for things like social distancing and so on, and you are getting some help by putting those people on the routes. But they took a very narrow view of it. These BMs and BTs, they were put on certain routes to assist the passengers because the PSVs on those routes could not accommodate their full capacity. But now that they are allowed to get back and carry more passengers, that is the ZRs, they are insisting that these BMs and these BTs be kicked to the curb. And their cry is that they're taking all of our passengers. I want to be kind to the ZRs and to say, hope they're not saying so out of greed. I hope not. I want to be kind to them. You see, sir, the BM and the BT work, that is predominantly tourist related. But sir, there are no tourists now. And certainly there are no tours now. And these BMs and BT drivers, they are our neighbors, they are our brothers, they need to live too. And I have to say that during the pandemic, I applauded the Barbados Light and Power for attaching electricity to the houses of very, very poor people whose children and whose grandchildren did not have electricity to use their tablets, which were gifted to them by the school. I applauded Light and Power. I said, what a good thing they have done. I know 2 families that they did it for. I applauded them. I applauded the fishermen who went out, caught the fish, came in and said to Minister Ford, look, come, collect this, take it, give it to those people who are less fortunate. And I applauded her. I want to applaud, who made me? I didn't get that either. I want to tell the ZRs, I would like to applaud them too. Because this is a time that it doesn't call for being selfish. It's not a time for us to have a lot of division. And I think that they should be, and they can, welcome those persons, the BMs and the BTs, on the same route. And no, look, I am helping these people to exist. I'm helping them to make a living. I heard the Tsar very often during the COVID, he said he saw full minibuses still operating in spite of the restrictions which have been put on them. He said he saw drivers driving without masks. When the bus is empty, of course you can take off your mask. But he said he saw them driving without their masks. And people, in spite of that, were getting into the buses, minibuses, saying, don't mind, I want to get home. One lady turned and said, I wonder which home you're making noise to go to. I want to get home. So, Mr. President, I, like Senator Mosley said, do believe that every one of them isn't bad, reckless, and in spite of 1 or 2 things I might have said which may appear to be a bit harsh on them, I still wish them all the best. And I do agree with this particular measure which is being put in place to curb some of that impetuosity and so on that they have. And so, sir, I have no objection whatsoever to this 3-strike rule under the Public Transport Miscellaneous Provisions Act 2020. I'm obliged to you, sir.
Thank Senator Grant, it's now your chance.
Thank you, Mr. President. I really had no intention of speaking in this debate. I really thought that this was a very simple debate dealing with the issue related to the increase in bus fares and with respect to the amendments which deal with more relating to regulations of, or regulating of the public transport. But I could not, sir. I really could not sit here and listen to certain comments being made and not get up and respond. And I have to say, sir, that I've come to realize in this chamber that if it is a discussion related to medicine, that Senator Franklin is, based on what he says, the knowledgeable voice and knows more about medicine than the medical doctors in the chamber. If it is about elements related to customs, he is an expert on that. Matters related to economics, he knows more economics than even those that are trained and are good economists. If it relates, sir, to law, he knows more law than those who are practicing at the bar, sir, and have been doing that for many years. And of course, far more than me with a simple law degree. He reminds me of my going to school at the Lord's School. And there was a guy, a student, a little older than I was, a little older than I was. And on every subject, sir, every subject, he knew it. He knew it all. And so we called him Know the Most. Senator Dr. Rogers would know because he too is from the Lodge School. Sir, it is simply not possible for one person to know it all. At least, in my view, humanly possible for one person to know it all. But what I want to do is to challenge Senator Franklin that if he does know it all, then share with us always the way that we do things and the way that we need to get things done so that we can advance the policies that are being put in place. Not to simply say, no, you can't do it, so it can't happen this way. I fear that the government, they can do it like this. I know this is the wrong way. But never offering advice and never willing to give that support to be able to achieve the policy objective that the government has. So I want to trespass on in the province of Senator Dr. Holder and Senator Dr. Rogers. And I want to reflect, and I asked her for the clerk to bring this book to me. And I went, sir, to page 555 of this book. I believe it's page 555. Yes, in the book. Yes, no, I can come to that. I'm going to come to that. No, the page in the book. I can make sure. The page in the book is page 550. No, it's actually page. No, I can come there, man. It's page 561 in the book. Page 561.
He might be going somewhere.
No, I going somewhere. No. I could have gone straight, sir, and said Ecclesiastes, chapter 11, verse 4. I could have gone straight there. But I went just to the Bible, to the book, and it says, he that observeth the wind. Let me make sure that I got it right. That's why I call for the Bible. He that observeth the wind shall not sow, and he that regardeth the clouds shall not reap. And I interpret that, and I'm asking Senator Holden, Senator Dr. Holden, and Senator Dr. Rogers, they will help me. Because my interpretation of that is that it reflects on an individual who is waiting for the perfection, the right time to sow, and looking at the wind, and if it's coming from the right direction or the wrong direction, and having his seed, probably, sir, staying in the barn and never going out in the field, sir, never planting. And you know, it is said that you reap what you sow. So that individual does not have the capacity to reap because they never sow, because they're looking, sir, for perfection. And the point that I'm making, sir, is that if you are looking for perfection, you may not get things done, and opportunities will pass you by. Sir, we exist in an environment where there's not a lot of time to waste. In fact, people will tell you that a minute lost is lost forever. Time lost is lost forever. And I accept, sir, that government will not always get things right. But, sir, we have to action things. And I think it is somewhat unfair for Senator Franklin to say that the government is out of control, doing whatever it likes. And I say that that is unfair, sir, because I do not believe that anyone can criticize this Barbados Labour Party government for consultation. There's been consultation on everything, consultation continuously, and Senator Franklin has been involved as well in some of the consultations. Because, sir, the government recognizes that in dealing with the critical issues that exist, that you do have to discuss with stakeholders and discuss with partners. And I do believe that the government has indicated, while there will be consultation, that the government will govern when it is required to govern. So I could not sit, sir, and allow Senator Franklin to make those kinds of remarks which are not accurate, which are not fair, and which reflect something that is totally untrue as it relates to the manner in which this government has been functioning. And I wanted, sir, to state that clearly. As it relates to validations, sir, I remember, sir, between 2003 and 2008, being in the Senate. At that time, sir, I was Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Tourism and International Transport. I remember well, then a Senator Frondell Stewart speaking to issues of validation, how many validation bills had come to the Senate. Sir, you know, it was very interesting for me to observe that between the period 2008 and 2018, there were a number of validation bills which came to Parliament. And the point that I'm making is that the validation bills came not because there's any desire at the outset to not facilitate precisely what is required within the law and the legislation, but there's so much that is happening that governments do have, sir, to come to Parliament at times with validation bills. Of course, it would be a good and glorious thing if that never had to be done. But the reality of how we function and how we exist it is that we do have at times to bring validation bills before the Parliament. So, sir, I needed to get those sentiments off my chest, as it were. And I will now speak very briefly to the two bills that are before us. And I want to say, sir, that I give my full support to these bills. Of course, the issue of the increase in bus fare, that is something that has been settled before, and law-abiding citizens are continuing to pay the bus fare. We understand the issue of the bus fare, and I think that persons have settled down, and we are not hearing any major comments in relation to that. But I want to spend just a few minutes, sir, speaking to the ZR culture that exists in Barbados. And I want to support the comments of the Deputy President of the Senate. ZR workers every day are on the road hustling. They are hustling to make a dollar. And I'm not in any way, sir, condoning the manner in which they function on the road, because, you know, sir, I have to admit that as I get a little older, I am a little less tolerant. I go, sir, to international airports. That was pre-COVID-19. Haven't gone to any, of course, since COVID-19. But pre-COVID-19, and I see signs up, no use of cellular phones. And then I look around and I see a lot of people using cellular phones. And I must confess that I can't understand that if the rule is no use of cellular phones, why people are using the cellular phones. So I tend, sir, just to follow the rules as best I can. Don't for a second, sir, believe that I am perfect. I certainly am not, and I wouldn't want to convey that impression. But I do believe that the ZR workers and the drivers, they have to adhere to the law. But I also recognize that they have to live, they have to survive, they have to take care of their families. And they're forced every day they go out on the road to bring in a designated amount of money to the owner. They're required to bring X amount of dollars, no matter what happens. And they have to give that owner first that money. And they have to pay for the diesel, for the vehicle, out of the money they make. And then what is left is theirs. And I wonder, sir, if we shouldn't look at a more humanitarian type of approach, and where there could be a combination of giving a salary amount and a commission amount as well, to allow them the ability and the opportunity to get a basic income, but at the same time to be able to earn a commission on an excess amount. And like I said, sir, I'm not condoning how they function and how they behave, but I recognize that it is about survival. It's about the ability to be able to take care of themselves and to take care of their families. And that is something, sir, that I hope that we can have some discussion about. I also think, sir, that we have to examine those persons who are ZR workers and the ZR drivers. And you know, sometimes, sir, we in this chamber, we assess and evaluate things based on our own position in life, our own level of education. In fact, sometimes, and I think, sir, sometimes why we believe that some comments coming from individuals, even some in leadership positions globally, are outrageous, is that they conflict with our own rational and logical thinking. But, sir, everyone is not like that. everyone does not think in a logical and a rational kind of way, and there are some people who are more moved by emotions than moved by the reality of a situation and moved by reasonableness. Sir, you know, I was recently in a meeting, and there was an individual who expressed concern about a particular issue, and you could see the emotion because the issue was impacting on him. And I think, sir, that we have to give consideration in terms of the subculture that exists and how do we deal with that subculture. And I recognize, sir, that I am now in my young old age. No, my young old age. I'm now in my young old age at 55 years old. And maybe I'm not as in touch with the younger generation. I mean, I walk around and I see fellas sometimes, sir, and I support people having, you know, whatever dress and thing that they like, how the clothing, the new styles and all of that. I see fellas walking, sir, with the pants close to the knees, man. I mean, or trying to walk, yeah. I mean, I can't understand. I must say that it's difficult for me to comprehend, but that is the style. That is, so I don't have an issue with that. But I've said in this chamber before that I believe that there's certain basic principles that have to remain the same. And maybe, sir, we have not done a good job of educating the young. Maybe we have not passed on to them in the way that we should the good values that need to exist in the society. Maybe we ourselves have been caught up in this, what some will term as a rat race for survival. And maybe, sir, we have to use an opportunity such as this. And when I say such as this, I speak, sir, of the COVID-19 environment, to really do what Senator Dr. Rogers would have said in the previous debate and reset, and really look at all of the elements of our society that we need to reset and we need to make better. I'm going to end, sir, by suggesting that while it is good that we have the legislation in place, we have to ensure that the provisions are properly enforced. Very often, we speak about matters and we bring legislation and the legislation is passed and people function in a manner as if the legislation never really existed. And if we are going to help to change the subculture, then one element of it does require that there is enforceability of the legislation. Sir, with those very few words, I'm obliged to you.
Senator Moore?
Mr. President, I beg to move that we adjourn to Mr. President.
Do one at a time.
Yes. I beg to move that the Transport Authority Validation Bill 2020, Miscellaneous Provisions Bill 2020.
You deal with item number 4 first?
Number 4.
That's
3 first? So the Public Transport Miscellaneous Provisions Bill 2020 be read a second time.
The question is that the Public Transport Miscellaneous Provisions Bill be now read a second time. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that the Transport Authority.
I need to leave the, need to go into committee.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Mr. President, I beg to move that Your Honor do now leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
Yes, the question is that I do now lead the chair, and the Senate resolve itself into a committee of the whole Senate for the further consideration of this bill in committee. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. And we are now in committee in relation to item number 3.
Elijah, ready? The Senate is now in committee.
In that Parliament, this being a second transport miscellaneous provisions bill. Clause 1.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 1 stand part.
The question is that clause 1 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Mr. President, I beg to move that clause 2 stand part.
The question is that clause 2 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Deputy President, I beg to move that the schedule be the schedule to the bill.
The question is that the schedule be the schedule to the bill. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that you do now report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do now report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman has reported to me the passage of the bill under consideration in committee. Third time.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill be now read a third time.
Question is that the bill under consideration be now read a third time. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. Do no pass.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this
Bill do no pass.
that this bill do no pass and be cited as the Public Transport Miscellaneous Provisions Bill Act, 2020.
Question is that the bill under consideration do now pass and be cited as the Public Transport Miscellaneous Provisions Act 2020. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it, and the bill has now been passed and will be cited as the Public Transport Miscellaneous Provisions Act 2020. Next one.
Name of the Honorable Acting Leader of the Senate to move the second reading of the Transport Authority Validation Bill 2020.
Mr. President, I beg to move that the Transport Authority Validation Bill 2020 be read a second time.
The question is that item number 4 on the public business, the Transport Authority Validation Bill 2020 be now read a second time. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that Your Honor do now leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
Question is that I do now leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself into a committee of the whole Senate for the further consideration of this bill in committee. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it, and we are now in committee in relation to item number 4.
Senate is now in committee.
Clause 1.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Clause 1 stand part.
The question is that Clause 1 stand part. Honorable Senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Clause 2 stand part.
The question is that Clause 2 stand part. Honorable Senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Report.
Mr. President?
Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that you do no report to His Honor the President the passage of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do not report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee. Honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman has reported to me the passage of the bill under consideration in committee.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill now be read a third time.
Question is that the bill under consideration be now read a third time. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill do now pass and be cited as the Transport Authority Validation Act 2020.
Question is that the bill under consideration do now pass and be so cited. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think
No. Divide.
the division has been called for. Mr. Clark, will you please take the vote of each and every member?
Senator Ms. Moore.
Aye.
Senator Ms. Scotty.
Aye.
Senator Dr. Springer.
Aye.
Senator Dr. Holder.
Aye.
Senator Adams.
Aye.
Senator Dr. Haynes.
Aye.
Senator Grant. Senator Ms. Cummins.
Aye.
Senator Sands. Aye. Your Honor. Senator Village.
Aye.
Senator Franklin.
No.
Senator Ms. Briggs.
No.
Senator Wiggins. Ms. Wiggins.
Aye.
Senator Dr. Rogers.
Abstain.
Senator Nurse.
Abstain.
Senator Dr. Leonard.
No.
Ms. State.
No.
Four noes. Yeah, 4 noes, 4 noes. And 2 abstentions. aye. 4 honorable senators voted no, and 2 abstentions.
The Deputy Clerk has reported that resulting from the division called for, 11 honorable senators voted aye, 4 honorable senators voted no, and there have been 2 abstentions. Go ahead. Yes, I'm sorry. The bill has been passed and will be cited as the Transport Authority Validation Act 2020.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this sitting be suspended until 2:30.
Question is that the sitting be now suspended for lunch for 1 hour, returning at 2:30. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it, and we are now at lunch.